Okay, lovely people. I think we can get started. I'm kind of eager to get started too, and I guess most of you are also eager to get started. So let's dive right into it. So yeah, thank you very much, all of you, for joining me here for the webinar. And yeah, the whole idea is to introduce the Yoruba name code base to people who are interested in contributing code to it, and to give an overview of how things fit together, and basically to give the information that will make getting started with developing or contributing code with the code base much more easier. My name is Dadipo Aderemi, and I've been helping out with the Yoruba Name project since last year, since it first started. I was one of the first folks who got to know about the project and got interested in it. I think I learned about it on Twitter, and it was still at the point where Kolato Boston was still trying to run the Indiegogo campaign to raise fund for the project. I got to know about it and sounded like something interesting that I would like to be part of. So I buzzed Kola up, and yeah, the rest is history, as they say. So since last year February, we've been working behind the scene, and we went live around February this year, and last month, I think it was last month, we also released the code base for the Yoruba name dictionary. It's now on GitHub, and which also led to us organizing this webinar to actually provide some information to those who are interested in joining us to build the dictionary further. Today at the webinar, I have one of my teammates, Laila. So she's also going to be participating in the chat. In case there are questions, general questions, she might be able to answer them while I focus on running through the slides for the webinar. Like I said in the email that I sent out, unfortunately, participation from you guys won't be possible via audio. And this is to make it as smooth as possible. But as you guys have already seen, you can participate via chat. I will try as much as possible as I run through the slide to answer the questions that I see popping up in the chat. And in case I can, then I will defer answering the questions till the end of the webinar itself. I guess that's all the preambles. Yeah, let's get to it. So the agenda is basically what you see on your screen. The first thing, there are a couple of things I'm going to touch on. We are going to start by doing an overview of the Yoruba name application. We are going to touch on the tech stack, have an overview of the technology that we use, and then we are going to proceed to how these things, how the technology, how it fits together, the kind of architecture we employed and whatnot. And then there will be some show time. Basically, this is the part where I will actually show you how to get started. So I will, it's going to be a hands-on demo. I'll be checking out the repository and setting it up on my machine. So you can actually see and take note of the necessary steps to get the code onto your machine and start developing on it. And then I'm going to talk about things related to making your first pull request. What's in it for me? If you're going to be contributing to this project in your free time, basically I would like to touch on some of the things that you might find advantageous by spending some of your time working on the Yoruba name code base and project. And lastly, we will wrap up with some questions. This is the part of the webinar where I will spend some time taking your questions via the chat and trying to answer as much as I can. Okay. let's get to it then. So the overview of the YorubaName applications. Most of you know the application that is accessible when you go to www.yorubaname.com. Actually, this is one of the two applications that is that comprises of the project. As you can see on your screen on the left side, we actually have the dashboard application, which is different from the website itself. The dashboard application is basically the back office. This is the tool that we build for the lexicographers to actually manage the entries in the dictionary. So this is something that people it's not open to the general public. It's only if you are a lexicographer that's when you have an access to this application. And on the right side, that's the website application itself. It's the public facing part of the application. This is where people can see the things that are in the dictionary. This is where people can search. This is where people can submit names, leave feedback, etc. And as you can see, as I wrote in the slide, these are two distinct applications with two distinct code bases. Not just that, they actually two distinct deployables. So the dashboard can be deployed on another server, and it doesn't affect the Yoruba website itself, the YorubaName website application, which can be deployed on another server. Right now, we are actually running the two applications on the same server, but there's nothing stopping anybody from taking this code and actually running them in two separate servers, because they are two distinct deployables. So that's the two core code bases that we have. It will also be good to actually see how the code bases work from the perspective of the workflow. How these tools actually help us in creating names entries in the database, and how it helps us in actually making it searchable. So basically what you have is, the first thing that you do that we have is that the dashboard application itself, this is, like I said, this is where the lexicographers work. And basically what they do here is, this is where they actually create the names entries. And when they do that, they're actually creating it in a MySQL database. The MySQL database is the storage. This is like this is the data store. This is where you have all of the names. This is where you have the names that are complete, the names that are pending, the names that are incomplete, the names that need attention and stuff like that. That is where the old names are stored, and the data store is a MySQL database. So basically, lexicographers, they create stuff, put it into MySQL database. That's the first step. The second step is, once a particular names, or once the names are actually complete, or the lexicographers feel that it has enough information and people should be able to view it, then through the dashboard application, they index names into Elasticsearch. And it is only until a name is in the Elasticsearch index that it can be viewable on the website itself. So that's the third step. So once the lexicographer publish a name, it goes into the Elasticsearch index. And once it's in the index, then from the website it can be searched, it can be seen. And the last thing to note is the fact that the dashboard application itself doesn't interact with either the MySQL or the Elasticsearch directly. All of the interaction is actually done via a REST-like API that is provided by the core application. I will expatiate on this further as we go through the webinar, and as I actually show you the demo on how I run the application itself on my machine. But what should be noted at this point is the fact that the The dashboard application, it's a plain JavaScript application, and every interaction that it does with either the data store or with the Elasticsearch is done via a REST API. I use the term REST-like API because, yeah, the current state of the API that we have doesn't might not be adhere to all of the principles that you have when you want to talk about RESTful APIs. So that's the overview. And there's a blog post on our blog. I have the link. You can see it there. This blog post actually runs through the workflow from the perspective of a lexicographer. The reason why I'm spending time to talk about this is it's good also if you are going to be developing an application to actually have an overview or an insight into how the end user actually gets to use the application that you are working on. So that's that. So let's go to the tech stack. And this comprises of the various technologies that we've actually employed to build these applications. Starting with the starting with the dashboard application itself. As I mentioned, the dashboard application is a pure JavaScript application, but it's built around AngularJS. So you have the typical JavaScript /HTML /CSS. We are writing raw CSS. We are not using any of the preprocessor, less or whatever yet. We're just using pure CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. And it's built on top of AngularJS, but it's the 1.5 version. Basically, it's not AngularJS 2. I guess in the future, once AngularJS 2 actually reaches its first release, then we will have some plans to actually migrate to AngularJS 2. But right now, it's AngularJS 1.5 or something. Yeah, for your typical single page applications, you have the typical suspect also when it comes to the build tool. So we have Bower, and then we have NPM and Grunt. That's basically an overview of the technology that we employed for the dashboard application. For the main core web application itself, the website, it's built using Java, and it's built on the Spring framework. But we also employ Spring Boot, which actually, kind of boots up your Spring development process when using Spring framework. So it's a Spring Boot application. We also use Elasticsearch. That's what powers the search functionality of the site itself. But the Elasticsearch, the way we are using Elasticsearch currently is embedded. So that means, you don't have to run or install an instance of Elasticsearch for the application to be able to use Elasticsearch. The application itself bundles the Elasticsearch instance that it needs. MySQL also, that's for the data store. And for the build tools, we are using Maven. Then we have some other minor frameworks and tools that we use, Hibernate, etc. But yeah, these are like your typical stuff that you'll find in your typical Java ecosystem. So that's the general tech stack. So depending on your expertise, if you are more of a JavaScript person, then I will think that the dashboard application will be something you will be interested in taking a look at. If you are a Java developer, conversant with Spring framework, or if you want to learn, then the website application might be where you want to start. So that's the general overview of this tech stack. But there are some part of the tech stack that I think deserves special mentions. And this is because without some knowledge of these tools, it might be difficult to actually get an overview of what's going on or be able to get started working with the code base. So AngularJS, it's a must. For the Spring part, like I mentioned, Spring Boot, it's what we use. We use Spring Security also. This is just for the authentication. So yeah, that's also needed. Then Spring Data. This is the abstraction layer that we use over the database access. And the last one is Elasticsearch. Elasticsearch plays a critical part of the whole stack. So it might be needed if you actually want to change stuff or do stuff around the search functionality. You definitely need to know one or two things about Elasticsearch. So those are like the things that I consider special mentions. Now let's look at the structure of the website dashboard itself. Like I said, it's a AngularJS app, and if you look at the folder structure, you will see that we tried as much as possible to kind of organize the folder according to the functionality that they provide. Actually, if you look at the recent commits that I've made into the code base, it was until recently that this kind of organization was done. Way before, it was, yeah, we had little modularization of the code base, but for the past couple of weeks back, I've actually spent some time to actually improve on that. There's still room for improvement. There's still ways or better ways to actually organize the folder, but right now this is what you have. So you have the auth folder, which actually contains the auth module that takes care of the authorization. You have the common, you have the geolocation, the names. The names contains code that actually deals with fetching the names from the data store, presenting it, creating the interface where the lexicographers can actually get to work on the names and yeah, whatnot. And then you have the users, which actually contains code that deals with managing the users. So that's the general overview. What you just need to know is that each folder in the /app/script folder tries as much as possible to contain certain functionalities. So that might be a good guideline when exploring the code base. For the website itself, and don't worry, I'm going to show you all this when we get to the demo part. We are going to go through the code base, or at least I'm going to show you how to set things up. For the website application itself, things are way much organized in terms of how the code base is set up. Also, it's a multimodal mapping application structure. So you have each folder corresponds or maps to a particular module. So you have the auth, like you see on the screen, the Bootstrap, Elasticsearch, events, importer module, the TTS module, the web API, the website, and stuff like that. And like I wrote in the README, the whole idea is that each module actually takes care of specific functionalities in the whole application. So, for example, the importer module, this is actually the code base, or this is part of the code base that contains logic that allows the lexicographers to work offline in a spreadsheet, so they can, yeah, perhaps if they don't have consistent access to the internet, it would be cool to do their work on a spreadsheet, and then when they come online, they'll be able to import the name. So that's the importer. The TTS itself is the functionality that contains the code that we can use to generate text-to-speech. This is still an ongoing part of the application. So you have the web API. The web API itself, this is the part of the application that exposes the REST APIs. So basically what you have is you have all these modules which are not aware of the web. They are just general modules. They're just code that do stuff that they are supposed to do. The web API itself now combines these different functionalities and exposes them via HTTP, via a REST-like API. And then the last module is the website. The website basically contains the client code, the front end, the template, the styles that you see for the website when you go to www.yorubaname.com. So technically, the web API could actually be deployed on a separate server. because what the web API does is to just expose endpoints. Let's say the requirement for this project was never to build a website, but to build an endpoint. Then we wouldn't have the website folder or the website module. We would just stop at the web API. So once you have the web API, you have your API exposed via HTTP, then anybody else could be able to consume the functionality exposed by the web API. And basically, this is actually what the website does. The code in the website consumes the rest, the endpoints exposed by the functionalities in the web API. That's also what the dashboard does. So when you start the website app, it runs the web API. You have your HTTP endpoints. The dashboard calls into this HTTP endpoint to actually get its job done. So that's the general overview. So like I said, it's a multimodal Maven application structure, and it also employs the traditional well, not all the time three layers, but it's your typical layer architecture. So you have things, if you take a peep into the code, you will see things like services, you will see things like um, repository. So you have clear concerns, like part of the code separated based on the part that deals with the data store, and the part that kind of combines some of the business logic. And for the web part, you will have the controller. So it's your typical three-layer architecture. Nothing complex, no fancy stuff going on here. This is something that a typical Java developer that has been programming in the ecosystem for like a couple of years will be familiar with. So that's the kind of architecture that we have, and we heavily use the dependency injection pattern. And for this is where Spring comes in. So the old application runs in a container, which is the Spring container, and everything is wired up for you. So we follow the dependency injection pattern. And also, like I mentioned before, the data access layer is built around Spring Data, which wraps around JPA. The provider for our JPA implementation is Hibernate. So that's the general architecture overview for the website app itself. So now it's show time, like I wrote here. This is where I'm going to stop the slide, and I'm going to switch, and I'm going to share my desktop, and you can actually see what's going on. So I'm going to clone the repositories, the two repository. I'm going to go through the system requirements that you need to set things up, going to run the application, and yeah, just the whole shebang, and you'll see how things go. So let's get to that right away. So I'm going to exit the slide. Then I'm going to start sharing my screen. Let's see, screen share. Okay, so what I have here is because I wanted a clean state, a clean slate to start with. I have a virtual box where I have Ubuntu running. So I'm going to switch to my Linux, to the virtual box, and then we are going to go through the steps. Let's do this. Okay. Before I go on, can you see my desktop? Can everybody in the webinar see my desktop now? Can I have some response from via the chat? If you can see the Ubuntu environment now. Lovely. Cool. Great. So let's start. I'll just fire up my browser now. Go ahead to GitHub, and I'm going to start with cloning the dashboard. Clone, you grab the URL. Easy peasy. Then let's go grab the code base for the website itself. Let's clone this. Is it legible? Or should I increase the font size? Let's see if I can increase the font size. Are the things on my screen legible? Okay. Anyway, I'll just continue. So I clone the website code base. Yeah, let's see if I can increase. Okay, well, I've put it into full screen mode. Okay, yeah, anyway, let's just continue. I think if you, let's see if I can easily find a way to do that. What about now? Yes, it should now be more legible. Ah, yeah, and that's one thing. You could actually increase the quality of the video. There's a gear icon towards the right side, so you could yeah increase it to something like 720. That will make the video quality sharper in case you are running on a low resolution before. Okay, but I've increased the font size, so yeah, it should be better now. So what we've done so far is just clone the code base. For the IDE, I'm a big fan of IntelliJ IDE, and I will recommend I will recommend if you can actually make use of that. Yeah, this is not like a marketing for the IDE, but I think it beats all of the other IDEs out there in the market. And the cool thing is that you could actually use the free copy because the IntelliJ uh, I just want to go to the site now. So just Google for you. Yeah. So IntelliJ IDEA comes with in two versions. You have the community, and then you have the enterprise. The enterprise isn't free. You have to shell out some money to get that. But the cool thing is that with the community version, you still have support for the programming languages that we use. And since our application server is actually embedded in the code base itself, we can easily go by with the community edition. So I will advise you to try this out. And this is actually what I'll be using for this demo. I've already downloaded it, and this is what you see here. So I already downloaded the community edition, and this is what we are going to use for the code base for the demonstration. Okay, so let's start with running the dashboard. For the dashboard to run, we need a couple of applications installed. Not to waste time, I've actually already installed a lot of all of the system requirements, all of the dependencies and tools that we need, just to show you. So first we'll definitely need Node.js. So I have Node.js already installed. I have version 4. You will need npm. npm also is already installed. You will need grunt. Grunt is already installed. You will need Bower. Bower is already installed. So these are like the tools that you need to actually get the dashboard application to run. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into the code base itself. And if you see, so you have your typical setup, you have the grunt file, you have the package, the JSON, which actually contains your dependencies, and then you have the bower, which is used to manage the front-end dependencies. What you will want to do, first of all, once you clone the code base, is actually do npm install. This will install all the dependencies that you need defined in package.json. So you want to do this first of all. So let's wait for that. It took a while. In the meantime, I could just let's see what's in the code base itself. Yeah, as you can see, we have the node modules folder created for you, and that's the effect of doing the npm install. Yes, now that I think about it, now that I remember, I've run into certain issues when installing, when running npm install previously. There's an error with the Phantom.js. So in case you're doing this and you run into uh, errors given by Phantom.js, I can't actually remember the specific of this error. I've run into it and I've had someone also had that same issue. But how to fix it is to actually confirm your Node.js version. I think that's what I did. I just had to upgrade to a newer version that I had running previously, and everything was fine. So in case you run npm install and you run into some strange errors, then yeah, your versions should be the first thing to explore. Okay, so we have that done. Let's do bower also install. This will get all our front-end dependencies and put it into the bower components folder. This should be much faster than the npm install. Yes. Now we have everything to start. So what we need to do, there are two ways to actually run the dashboard application. The first mode is in the development mode. And this is where you actually use grunt serve. to run the dashboard application, which is basically what I'm going to do now. So if I do grunt serve, so it fires up the application and it runs. The reason why it opened right away was because I was already logged in before, but ideally you should have this. And this is all grunt serve running. So you are running in development mode. And if you've played around with grunt before, you know this actually watches your code base for any changes. And if there's anything changed in your application, in your code, it automatically reloads and all those magic that makes your development flow much simpler. So you have the grunt serve running. And one thing I will try to log in now. You see, nothing happens. If we look into the code, you see there's some yeah, console, it is response is null. Basically, what's happening is it's trying to call the API that is required for authentication before it will actually proceed into the application itself. And like I mentioned, this functionality is actually provided by the core website application itself. And the reason why this is failing right now is because we haven't started the core application. Once we get to that, we'll be able to log in into the system because the API that authenticates will be available. Then we can do the authentication and everything will work. So that's run serve. I will stop the server now, and then I will just briefly mention the other mode where you could actually run the dashboard application. And this is actually this is what is used when running in production. Basically, what we are going to do, the second way of running it is to actually build the code base itself, and then we have like an artifact, and it's this artifact that we can now put on a web server, and we can run it that way. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because it's always good after any changes has been made in the code to also test if everything works correctly by actually building it and running it in the way it will run in production. I've run into instances where I made some changes while in the development mode. So grunt serve was fine, everything was fine, but apparently there was a bug. There were some issues in the build flow itself, and that actually it was only obvious after deploying. So since then, I always to just do some sanity check, run, build the application and run it also. For you to do that, you actually do grunt build. So there are two build statements actually. You can do grunt build. Grunt build will build it for the production environment. But if you want to build for the dev environment, you do dev build. I'll first do the grunt build, so you'll see the difference. And while this is going on, I can just quickly open the grunt.js file. Yeah, so this is where the build instructions are located. If you're familiar with grunt, you'll be able to make sense of this magic. Recently, I've been playing around with gulp, and I think gulp is way more um, uh, user friendly and much more intuitive. So basically, you have the dev build. So this is build for running in local. Basically, the difference between the dev build and the normal build is actually the base URL, which is actually what dictates the endpoint that the application will try to reach. So that's dev build, and then your default, which is your typical build, is just this, and this will wire the endpoint to talk to the production server. So I have this already done. So grunt build is done. Now, if you check the folder we have, we'll see that a new dist folder has been created for us. This is actually the output of the build process. So the next thing is for us to put this dist folder in a web server and run it. And it just needs to be a web server because it's all static JS, HTML, and whatnot. There's this simple server that I usually use. It's an HTTP server. It's a Node.js module. So it allows you to run a lightweight server on your machine that you can use to serve static files. And since the gist is actually static files, then we can easily use this. I already have this installed, so I can just do HTTP server and then point it to the location of the content that I want to serve. So I do this. It's now running on port 8080. If I now go to 8080, I see the application itself running. If I try to log in, let's go to, yeah, it still fails because, yeah, the backend itself is not up yet. But let's go to the network just to see what's going on. If I try to log in, you will see that it's trying to contact the endpoint is actually the production environment itself, and this won't work. So what we want to do is to stop this. Let's remove. And then I'm just going to do grunt build grunt dev build. So once this build, the correct URL will be used. And this is something you need to know when testing out in your local development. Let's wait for it. Okay, cool. So if I do the same thing, I run this using the HTTP server. It's started port 8080, reload. Now if I try to log in, you will see that the URL is now localhost, which is basically what we want. So that's how to get your dashboard application running. I'll stop that and I will switch to the grunt serve because in development, ideally, this is what you want to do. And as you can see, it's pretty simple. Clone the code, have your Node.js installed, have npm installed, have grunt installed, have bawa installed, and then you're good to go. And if you check out the code, the page on GitHub for the dashboard, this steps is actually outlined. So it's basically there. You can just follow the instructions that you see here also. So we have the dashboard application running. The next thing we need to do is to, yeah, it's still running. It's still here. The next thing we want to do now is to get the main guy itself running, and that's the core application. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do that in this window. I think I'll quickly answer some of the questions I see. Being more functional, yes, this video will be made available after the webinar. It's being recorded and it's going to be available on YouTube. I'm not sure if I get the question correctly, but when it comes to the different environments, like I said, you have the option to build the code itself and build it for testing for your on your local machine. basically what it does is that instead of calling the YorubaName.com, that's the production URL, it calls the local host. And basically that's the difference. So the difference between local, or when the application is built for local consumption and for production, is basically the endpoint. So if you can validate that everything works with the localhost endpoints, with your local instances, then you are kind of rest assured that everything will also work when you switch the URL to the production endpoint. Okay, so let's continue. I will increase the font size here also. Nope. Zoom. Sorry, zoom out. Zoom in. Okay, so what we want to do now is to get the core application running. So I'm going to switch into that. And if you do a alert, you'll see your typical structure. And this is exactly as I explained, the modules and the directory structure. What I want to do now, for me to be able to run this, I need to have certain things installed. Definitely, I need to have Java installed. I have Java already running. I have Java running. Then I need Maven also. That's very important. So that's the build tool. So you need to have Maven running. You also need MySQL. Well, the MySQL part is actually optional, which I'm going to touch on because it's possible for you to run the application without MySQL instance running. First of all, let's run it without MySQL. And the way to do this is actually using the Maven Spring Boot plugin. If we look into the README, yes, so basically this is what you need to do to actually run it from the command line. So I'm going to copy this. The thing is, if I run this command here, it won't work. And that's because for you to run the application, you actually have to switch into the website folder itself. It's from here that you can actually run the application. All this is also mentioned in the README. So if I do this now, the interesting part to take note in that command is the Spring Profiles active part. This is actually what tells Spring to actually start the application, but it should use the in-memory database. And with the in-memory database will actually be very, very handy. Like if you want to get up and running right away, you don't have to worry about downloading MySQL, installing MySQL, creating the database, whatnot, all those shebang. You can just easily start your application using an in-memory database. It's nice, it's fast. The only drawback to that is that you won't be able to see the database structure itself. So in case you are curious how things are created, what tables do you have and whatnot, you might not be able to do that. And also, it goes without saying that the things that you change or the things that you save will be lost with each restart. That's the only drawback for the memory, but it's quite handy if you just quickly want to get started and running. So as you can see, the application is started and it's running using an embedded Tomcat. It's running on port 8081. So if I go to my localhost now, I see the application loaded. Simple, straight to the point, little pain involved. As you can see, the startup process when in development actually bootstrap your application and populate it with some names. So you have some names already added to the index that you can play with. So that's how to run the application in memory. So now that the application is running, we can now go to the dashboard and see if it's going to be possible for us to log in now. And then it works. Because the endpoint is available, the dashboard application can reach it, and then you can log in into the dashboard. So you can play around with stuff. So that's that. I will quickly stop it now. I will quickly stop it, and then I will now switch to the IDE. From the IDE, I'm going to show you how to run the application with MySQL. So for us to get the application running with MySQL, there are two things we need to do. And I just recently updated the README this afternoon to actually mention one key thing. But the first thing is you need to create your database with it requires a database name dictionary. It requires a database with a user dictionary and password dictionary. This is the credentials for the dev environment. But the other important thing that I need to mention, because if you don't do this, your application won't start. And that's the fact that you need to set the correct character set. The Yoruba language itself makes use of a lot of accent and the amion. So if your MySQL database is not configured to be able to handle these characters, then you will end up with this exception when you try to start up the application. And this is because the bootstrap process in development will try to insert some names into your database, and the names that are going to be inserted makes use of the signs, the accent. And if MySQL is not configured to be able to use or to handle these guys correctly, then the whole startup process will fail. And there are two ways to do that. You could actually set the settings globally in your my.conf file. Once you do that, you're good to go. But if you want to set the character set per database, then this is the query to run. I've already done this, and that's why I was able to start the application. So that's one key important thing that you need to take note of. It's so important that I just had to update the README so people approaching the code base will be will know this. Okay, so just to confirm that I have my dictionary database set up right. Okay. Let's do my scroll. Okay, so I can show tables. So I have my dictionary database created for me. So if I use So basically, this is what you just need to do. You just need to ascertain that the dictionary database is there. The process of populating the dictionary database with the required tables, all this is done via the bootstrap process of the application. So what we now want to do is to run IntelliJ IDE, which I have already downloaded. This will start IntelliJ. Okay. So let's make sure that yes, the application is not running anymore. So what we need to do right now is to import the code base into IntelliJ. Where's my IntelliJ? Yeah. Yeah, there you go. So I'm just going to import a new project. So I'm going to navigate to where the source code for the website application is, then pick the prompt. Yeah. So that's importing the application. Let's wait for IntelliJ to get started. Yes. Okay. So IntelliJ is about to start. It's still doing its magic indexing stuff. Yes. So I have all my code base in my IDE. And we can just quickly run through this. Like I said, we use your typical layer architecture. So if we explore the Elasticsearch module, for instance, the Elasticsearch node factory beam, this is making use of some of the functionalities provided by Spring Framework. This is the part of the application that actually creates an embedded Elasticsearch for us. So on startup, this bean will kick in, and then it will make an instance of Elasticsearch available. All the search functionality so far is contained in the Elasticsearch service. So this is the part of the code. If you want to do anything regarding the search experience, or want to fix a bug, or want to add some feature, the Elasticsearch service is where to go. So that's the Elasticsearch module. I could go into the importer module because I talked about that earlier on. And as you can see, yeah, it contains code related to importing from an Excel file. So yeah, this is where you read the file and then extract the content, put it into the MySQL data store. And now let's see the web API, because this is the core that actually exposes your REST endpoint. So basically, these are the API. So if you want to interact with TTS, there's a TTS API class, and this is what exposes the TTF and the TTS functionality. You have the suggestion API, you have the search API. The search API makes use of the Elasticsearch service. As you can see, it is injected. It's part of the search API class. So we have the Elasticsearch service. So meaning for the Elasticsearch API to expose its functionality via this path, the Elasticsearch service is one of the dependencies that it needs. And basically, that's the typical way we have where we assemble our components together. So that's the web API, and then you have the website itself, and the website also just contains this is the website. So basically, it contains, you have the API service. This is actually what is used to actually interact with the endpoint that is exposed by the web API. So you have this, and then you have controllers for each of the individual views that you see in the website itself. So that's the home controller, it's this. You have the improved entry controller, and then the views themselves is inside the website. And we are making use of handlebars for templating. So it's not JSP, it's not free market handlebars. So you have all the handlebars templates in the website folder, and then you have your static resource, your CSS, images, whatnot here. So that's how it works. So now that we've done that, let's now get this. let's get this running within our IDE. And to do that, what we need to actually run is the dictionary, yeah, the dictionary application. Every Spring Boot application actually has this main method. This, excuse me, this is the main entry to start any Spring Boot application. So once you call this main file, this main method, then your application starts. So let's just do that. I could actually right click on it and then run it, or I could create a run configuration. So let's create a run configuration. So it's going to be an application because we are just running a main class. I'm going to tell it where main class is. So it's in dictionary application, this main class. I'm not going to give it any VM options. Let's say I want to run it in memory via the IDE. This is where I give it the Spring profile path profile settings. But I'm not going to do that because if I don't, by default, it will assume that there's a MySQL database running and it will use that instead. For module, I'm running the website module, right? So I pick this. And that's what I need to get started running the application within IntelliJ. So I call this, where do I give it a name? No, wait. This is the default. I need to create a new one. Yes. Website. Yeah, okay, so now that it's there, I can now run it. Let's wait for it. I started off in debug mode, so we can actually put some breakpoints and see some of the code being executed. Let's see. There's a presentation view for IntelliJ. Okay, yeah. Maybe not, because I actually want to show other parts of the idea. So. Okay. So it's still building up. Looking at the logs, it's inserting the dummy data. And then, yeah, the final message that you're looking for, application started. So if I now go to my browser and I reload, I see the application running. That's that's basically how the whole the website application runs. And I could easily just quickly put a breakpoint somewhere in the search. So let's say successes. So let's put a breakpoint here, and let's see if this part of the code actually gets called when I try to search on the website itself. Oh no, I need to go here. So let's say I search for, yeah, as you can see, we have a breakpoint. And if you look to the stack trace, you will see that at a point in time, this was triggered by the API itself, by the search API. Just to confirm that, I could go to the web API, go to name, go to REST, go to search API. Yeah, for instance, the autocomplete functionality, if I put a breakpoint there, go back there, and I try to type. Yeah, the breakpoint get kicked in because this is where the autocomplete functionality is implemented. If I continue and I switch back, I've removed let me remove the breakpoint. That's that's how it works. Yeah, basically that's it. One other interesting thing that I should mention in the code is the event. This is how we try to have some loose coupling between some of the things going on within the system. So, for example, if there's a name that is deleted, there's an event, name deleted event that is thrown. If a name is indexed, if a name is searched, and if a name is uploaded, there's really nothing fancy about this. We're not using any heavyweight or any full blown framework to actually implement this, but a library. And you just have a simple pops up service that actually handles the publishing and listening of the event. Um, yeah, I guess that's that. If I now go back to my dashboard, I should still be able to do stuff here because the application itself is running. I can log in again. I can see it, and I can see the recently added entries. And yeah, that's it. Before I switch back to the presentation, if there's any quick questions about what I've just done regarding the code, I might be able to answer that right away. If not, I can just switch back to the presentation and we try to wrap things up. Okay, maybe not. Yeah, so let's switch back. Let's exit the Linux environment, the virtual box. And so I can just stop this from running. Okay, so yeah, so that's that. making your first pull request. Yes, the first thing you need to do is to apparently or obviously fork the project. And then you need to find a bug that you think you might be able to fix or a simple feature that you might be able to implement. And you can do that by going through the issues. Each of the repo has the issue. So this is where we list yeah, the things that we need to do. So you can go through here. If you go to the dash issues, so this is where you can yeah, find stuff. And if you need any clarification, you can easily um, comment and ask whoever created the story to actually clarify or provide more information. So that's the first step. Find a bug or feature to implement. And yeah, the other thing is you can actually explore the endpoints. That's something I didn't show you. Um, we can actually do that using the production environment. So if I go to YorubaName, I go to Swagger UI. This is a very quick and easy way to actually get to know the API that you can interact with. So let's say you don't actually want to contribute to the code base itself, but you want to build another client around the YorubaName application. So perhaps you want to build maybe an Android application, for instance, or you want to build an iOS application, or you want to build another mobile version or whatnot. The best or the fastest way to actually see the API that are available for you is actually through this documentation. It's not the most exhaustive documentation, but it allows you to quickly see the lay of the land. So, for example, now you see the things that you can do under the auth API, you see how you can provide feedback, you see the search API itself. So, and you can see the individual HTTP verbs that is associated with each endpoint. So this is a very quick and fast way for someone who's just new to the project and we want to actually treat it as a black box and just want to interact with the interfaces that it exposes. This is a good way to get started. And if you see this endpoint and you are also interested in the implementation, you can just easily find this part in the code. So that's something good to know that will get anybody started up fast and contributing or building stuff around the project. So yeah, you can explore the endpoint. And then we've created a GitHub channel where I will try as much as possible to be available to to answer some of the questions for the newcomers. So this is the URL for the GitHub channel. It's a public channel, so you can feel free to join the room. This is where we hold dev related discussion. So I know there'll be some questions that I might not be able to address today, but feel free to ask them in the GitHub channel. And once you have this, once you've explored, once you've forked the project, you've picked the particular feature you want to implement, you've checked out the code, you've explored the API, you've had questions, you've asked in the GitHub channel. Then the next thing to do is to create your pull request. This is a link that actually shows you how to make a pull request. You can easily go for this, and I'm sure you will find this page. Once you create a pull request, the next thing is for me to review the pull request. If I have comments, if I have some suggestions, if I have some modifications or whatnot, I'll say. But if everything looks fine, then I'll just merge into the project, and that will be that's the way to actually contribute code into the YorubaName applications itself. So the next thing is, what's in for me? You might want to ask. Well, open source is one of the uh, convenient and one of the cool ways to actually pick up something new. So if you actually like still learning, if you're still a beginner, and yeah, around some of the technologies that we use. For example, if you've always heard about Angular JS and you've never actually had the opportunity to use Angular JS in your day work, in your regular office 9 to 5 hustle, finding an open source that actually makes use of this technology is one of the easiest ways to actually learn new skills. So yeah, we have cool stuff around Spring Boot. If you want to get yourself familiar with Spring Boot, this is an avenue for you. Elasticsearch too is a hot and cool technology. It's an abstraction over the Lucene framework, and it offers a very nice, powerful way to actually work with Lucene and to actually have systems that can be easily distributed. So if you're interested in exploring Elasticsearch, this is an avenue for you to do that. Also, in case you're not even a novice, it's also an opportunity to own existing skills. Um, that's an advantage of getting involved in this project. It's also, yeah, there's also the satisfaction of actually the the community feeling of actually working hand in hand together with other developers from every sphere of life, from yeah, people that actually share the same interest. Yeah, working together to actually build something cool that also has some real cultural value. Yeah, it's a great satisfaction. So that's one thing. The other advantage is actually this is also an opportunity to actually meet new developers also. So yeah, if you're wondering what's in for me, these are some of the things that I think you should you should think about. And with that, that is actually the last slide. So I think we kind of overrun the 45 minute estimation by quite a lot. But I'm actually happy that I still have a lot of people on the webinar. Thanks for staying. So now, now this is the part where I actually get to quickly answer some of your questions that you have via the chat. So, so far so good. Questions, please ask them right now, and I'll be able to provide some answers.